Have you ever noticed that some of the most powerful moments in life are wrapped in silence? Not in what was said, but in what was left unsaid. Not in what we built, but in the quiet between the bricks. In music, it's the pause that makes the melody breathe. In conversation, it's the moment of silence after a heartfelt confession. In nature, it's the stillness between two waves that calms the soul. What if those in-between moments, the empty spaces, were not empty at all? There's a Japanese word for this. It's called jian. And once you see it, you start to realize it's everywhere. In art, in design, in gardens, in gestures, even in the way a home welcomes you in quiet. But more than anything, Ma is a philosophy, one that invites us to slow down, to breathe, and to find meaning not just in what we add to life, but in what we choose to leave out. Today, let's step into that space together. Let's explore the beauty of Ma and why embracing emptiness may just make your life feel whole. There's a kind of moment that rarely gets talked about. It slips by in a pause. It lingers in the space between heartbeats. It's that quiet second before your grandchild answers a difficult question. It's the hush that falls after a piece of music ends. When no one claps because everyone's still feeling, we tend to rush past these moments. In a world of noise and motion, silence can feel uncomfortable, like something's missing. But what if it's not missing? What if it's meaningful? Years ago, I visited a small chapel in the countryside. No music, no preacher, just sunlight through stained glass. And the creak of old pews as I sat down. I remember thinking, why does this feel more sacred than anything I've heard in months? The answer didn't come in words. It came in stillness. That space, where nothing was happening, wasn't empty. It was full of presence. It gave my thoughts room to breathe. It gave me room to be. And that's when I first began to notice. The spaces we ignore often hold the deepest truths. Whether it's a pause in a conversation, an unfilled corner of a room, or a moment of quiet at sunrise, these aren't gaps. They're invitations to feel, to notice, to listen. What if the most powerful part of life isn't the action, but the pause before it? There's a word for that idea, and it comes from a culture that has built beauty around it for centuries. Let me introduce you to Ma, a Japanese philosophy that might just change how you see everything around you. If you search for the word Ma, you'll likely find translations like gap, pause, or negative space. But those words, they miss the soul of it. Because Ma isn't about what's missing, it's about what could be. In Japanese, the character for Ma, jian, is made up of two parts, the symbol for door, men, and the symbol for sun, or light, ri. Put together, they create an image, sunlight shining through a door. Not the door itself, not the light outside, but that moment, when light filters in, soft, warm, ungraspable, yet undeniably there. That's Ma. It's the space that allows light in, the breath between words, the hush that gives weight to the music, the empty chair at the table that still holds a presence. In Western thought, we often see space as something to fill, an empty wall, a quiet hour, a pause in conversation. We rush to add another painting, another task, another word. But in Ma, the space itself is sacred. It's intentional. It's the canvas that lets meaning unfold, not by addition, but by restraint. Think of it like this. In a poem, it's not just the words that move us, it's how they're spaced, where the silence falls, what's left unsaid. Ma invites us to stop trying to fill every corner of life, and instead to ask, what happens when we leave room for things to breathe? And when you start to see life that way, not as a list of things to do, but a rhythm of presence and pause, everything changes. Coming up next, we'll explore how this simple idea, Ma, has shaped Japanese architecture for centuries, not through grandeur, but through gentleness. and space that speaks without sound. To truly understand Ma, we have to go deeper into the quiet heart of Japanese spirituality. At the core of many Eastern philosophies, there's a strange, almost uncomfortable idea that emptiness is not emptiness at all. In Zen Buddhism, there's a word, mu, wu. It means not, nothingness, but not in a bleak or hopeless way. It's the absence that holds infinite potential, like a blank canvas, a silent prayer, a moment between breaths. There's also ku, kong, another Buddhist concept often translated as emptiness. But again, it's not void in the Western sense. It's more like a spacious stillness, the open sky that allows clouds to pass. Ma draws from these roots. It embraces the belief that silence, space, and stillness aren't passive. They're active participants in how we experience the world. Let me give you an example. In the West, we often associate meaning with fullness. We decorate, we collect, we speak. A beautiful room is filled, a good conversation is lively, a successful life is busy. But Ma, and the spiritual traditions behind it, ask, what if true beauty lives in what's not said? What if peace is found not in what you do, but in what you choose not to do? This isn't about withdrawal or emptiness for the sake of emptiness. It's about making room. Room for reflection, room for presence, room for grace. It's why a Zen monk might sweep a path in silence. Not because it's efficient, but because every movement is sacred. Every pause is intentional. When we rush, we miss life. But when we make space, life begins to speak back. So the next time you find yourself in silence, don't run from it. Sit with it. Let it teach you something. Because in that silence, there may be something you've been needing to hear all along. And it's this quiet wisdom that Japan has gently woven into its spaces for centuries. In the next part, we'll step inside a tea house, not just to see how it looks, but to feel how Ma lives in its walls. Imagine walking into a Japanese tea house. There's no grand chandelier, no ornate furniture, no clutter, just paper doors, wooden floors, and the gentle sound of wind brushing through the garden. At first, it may seem too simple, too empty, but stay a moment longer. And something shifts. The emptiness begins to feel alive. The light pouring through the shoji screen dances across the tatami mat. The space between the objects whispers. There's room to breathe, to think, to feel. This is Ma in architecture. It's not about minimalism for style. It's about presence. It's about what happens in between walls, between people, between moments. Take the tokonoma, for example. It's a recessed alcove in many traditional Japanese homes. You might see a scroll with calligraphy, a single flower, maybe a ceramic bowl. But what makes it powerful isn't just the item. It's the space around it, the restraint, that conscious decision to display just one thing and allow the silence to hold it up like a spotlight. In the West, we might call this negative space. But in Japan, it's not negative at all. It's active. It's the Ma that gives the object soul. Even the layout of rooms reflects this thinking. Open plans, sliding partitions, a fluid connection between indoors and out. Instead of boxing life in, Ma invites nature in. It breaks the boundary between home and world. The garden becomes part of the living room. The sky becomes part of the ceiling. And in that harmony, you feel something you may not have felt in years. Peace. In a time where modern homes are louder, busier, more crowded than ever, there's something deeply healing about a space that simply holds you. Not with things, but with thoughtfulness. And maybe that's the kind of space we all need more of. Coming up next, we'll explore how Ma lives not just in buildings, but in something even more delicate, the ancient art of Japanese flower arrangement, Ikebana. At first glance, it might look like just a few flowers in a vase, a single stem reaching outward, a leaf curling gently to one side, and a patch of empty space, calm. intentional, almost sacred. This is Ikebana. But unlike Western flower arrangements, Ikebana isn't about filling a bouquet to the brim. It's not about abundance. It's about awareness. Each element is placed with care, not just where it is, but where it isn't. The flower, the stem, the leaf, they don't compete for attention. They breathe. And between them lies Ma, the space that gives meaning. You see, in Ikebana, it's not just what you include. It's what you leave out that matters most. A long, curved branch might stretch into open air, creating a sense of movement and tension. Across from it, a cluster of blossoms balances the scene, not by mirroring, but by responding. The empty space in between. It's not decoration. It's not a mistake. It's the heartbeat of the arrangement, Ma. I once watched an Ikebana master at work. He didn't rush. He didn't speak. He'd hold a flower in his hand, tilt his head, and just listen. Not with his ears, but with his eyes, with his presence. And when he finally placed the flower, it felt like watching someone light a candle in a dark room. Suddenly, the space around it came alive. This is the art of restraint, of knowing when to stop, of realizing that beauty doesn't always come from more, but from just enough. Ikebana teaches us that elegance lives in simplicity, that emptiness can be expressive, that silence, when honored, speaks volumes. In our busy, over-decorated, over-scheduled lives, what would it look like to practice Ikebana, not just with flowers, but with time? With conversations? With the way we design our days? Coming up next, we'll walk into one of the most peaceful places on earth, a Japanese garden, to see how Ma turns even rocks and raked sand into poetry. Step into a Japanese garden, and time slows down. There are no grand fountains, no bursts of color shouting for your attention. Instead, there's stillness, stone, moss, sand, air, and most of all, space. These gardens aren't built to impress. They're designed to invite you inward, toward peace, toward presence. This is where Ma lives in its purest form. In a Zen garden, for instance, you might find wide open stretches of gravel, raked into delicate waves that mimic water. No real water flows, yet somehow you feel the river moving. That's Ma at work. It's not about creating what you see, it's about awakening what you imagine. A few carefully placed rocks become mountains. A small patch of moss becomes a forest floor. And the empty spaces? They become possibility. They become silence you can walk through. Every element in a Japanese garden is chosen with deep intention. A crooked tree, a winding path, a gap between stepping stones. They're not random. They're invitations to pause. Because in these spaces, you're not just walking through a garden, you're walking through a poem. Each step is a sentence, each view a verse. And the Ma, the spaces in between, is the punctuation that lets the story breathe. I remember standing in one of these gardens on a cool spring morning. There was no one else around, just the sound of bamboo creaking in the wind and the distant splash of a hidden waterfall. And for a moment, a brief, sacred moment, the world didn't feel noisy or rushed. It felt complete, whole. Without saying a word, that's the power of Ma in nature. It reminds us that not everything needs to be explained, filled, or fixed. Some things are meant to be felt. And in a world that often demands constant doing, Ma gives us permission to just be. In the next part, we'll move from gardens to galleries and explore how Ma shapes Japanese painting and calligraphy through the beauty of what's left undone. Picture a scroll of Japanese calligraphy. A single brushstroke curves across the paper, bold and fluid, then stops, leaving a wide, quiet space. Then another stroke. Another pause, another breath. You don't need to read the characters to feel their rhythm. That too is Ma. In Japanese painting and calligraphy, what's not drawn is just as important as what is. The blank space isn't accidental. It's intentional silence, the visual echo of a spoken whisper. Let's take the famous screen painting, Pine Trees by Hasegawa Tohaku. It shows a grove of ancient pines, but large parts of the image are shrouded in mist, empty, pale, almost unfinished. But that's the point. That mist, that ma, invites your imagination to complete the picture. You don't just observe the painting, you enter it. Another example, Ogata Korin's Irises. Vivid blue flowers bloom against a background of gold, but there's so much space around them. The irises don't fill the canvas, they breathe within it. The space amplifies their beauty. It gives them dignity. It says, this is enough. Let them be seen. In Western art, we often value detail, realism, fullness, every corner covered, every story told. But Japanese aesthetics, guided by ma, leave room for mystery, for stillness, for the viewer to participate. And it's not just what's on the paper, it's how it's created. In calligraphy, the brush pauses, the hand lifts, ink bleeds softly into silence. Ma lives in those pauses. It lives in the dancer's stillness, in the musician's rest, in the white between the lines, and in a deeper sense, it lives in us. Because when we slow down enough to notice the space around a thing, we begin to see it more clearly, and perhaps we begin to see ourselves more clearly too. In our final chapter, we'll bring everything together and discover how ma isn't just an idea for artists, monks, or architects. It's a way of living, a quiet revolution waiting in the spaces we've forgotten to honor. You don't need to travel to Kyoto or sit in a Zen temple to experience ma. You just need to pause. Maybe it's in your morning coffee, when the house is still quiet and the steam curls upward in silence. Maybe it's in the way you choose not to fill every shelf in your home, or every hour in your day, or every silence in a conversation. You see, ma isn't just a design principle, it's a life principle. It asks, can you make room for breath? For reflection, for meaning? In a world that often shouts, ma whispers, and those whispers, they stay with you. You don't need to build a rock garden, but what if you built a few more pauses into your week? You don't need to learn calligraphy, but what if you learn to leave more white space in your thoughts? Ma teaches us that not every moment needs to be productive, not every space needs to be filled, not every silence needs to be broken. In fact, some of the most beautiful things in life happen in the in-between, between words, between people, between sunrise and the start of the day. So today I invite you to notice the ma around you, in your home, in your schedule, in your heart. Let it breathe, let it be, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find that the peace you've been chasing has been quietly waiting in the space you never thought to look. Thank you for spending this quiet journey with me. If this video resonated with you, I'd love to hear where you've found ma in your own life. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing. Because sometimes, the next step in our story starts with the space we give it.